about our son. It is an honor for us to be here, and we thank you all. We thank first John Finley, Wells's childhood friend, who is a resident here and is Cub Scout leader, and made the connection so that we could come here today. Mr. Ragnes was very helpful too in organizing all of this. I'll tell you a little bit about our son from a mother's perspective. I'm sure Honor will have some from her sister's perspective. But from the time he was a very little boy, he was a bright light. He was very courageous. He was fearless. He was always leaping from high places. He had a great imagination and would play combat things or in camouflage gear with John. He will remember that. Well, I do. Wells's friends would say, wherever we went, if Welles was with us, we always knew he had our back. He was a loyal friend. He was very protective of others. And we learned since his passing that he actually had made more than one formative changes in friends' lives where he got out of trouble. One young man who was involved with drugs, and he put him in a car and took him up to a rehab place. That man is having a very successful life now and family. Another young man who almost was involved in a knife fight in high school, and Welles was the only one that stepped up to break that up. That's thanks to Tom Rinaldi's research for the book that he wrote about Welles called The Red Bandana. We learned many things about Welles, but his friends loved him dearly, his teammates loved him dearly, we loved him dearly, and from a very early age, Welles was extremely protective of his younger sisters, Honor, who was close in age, and Paige, who was 7 years younger. So my hearts are with the other 9/11 families who are here. I know what a terrible journey it has been for all of us, no matter what story we learned or maybe didn't even learn a thing. We were in that bad place for many months. We heard nothing until Welles was recovered on we received the report. He was recovered on March 19th, but we didn't find that out till March 22nd of 2002. My first question of the police officer who came to tell us was, how was he identified? And when we were told he was identified by fingerprints, I was stunned because we didn't know anything about what happened to Welles except that he'd spoken to some of his friends a little before 9 o'clock. He called from his office, so we just assumed that he was lost in the flames or in the collapse of the buildings. So the first couple of days after 9/11 happened, I was in a tremendous state of shock. I remember sitting, watching the television, hoping for a glimpse of Welles, not knowing anything. A friend who was a firefighter down there came to report that they were doing everything they could to find Welles and the others. I knew three things from the start. Number one, looking at this, that it was going to take years and like putting together a jigsaw puzzle before we knew a lot of what had happened there inside the towers and the collapse. Number two was that I did not want our daughters' lives to be derailed because of this. That was most important to me. They were both brilliant young women with promising lives. Honor was in law school at St. John's University, and our other daughter was training with American Ballet Theater people for a professional career in ballet. Both changed what they were doing, but that was fine. They have beautiful lives today. And the third thing was I knew that I couldn't pick up a gun and go fight the evil of what happened. The only way I would be able, my only weapon was to get that out there into the world and somehow do something good. So when Welles was recovered, we knew that he must have gotten down, but it wasn't until 2 months after that, when the New York Times came out with the article, Fighting to Live as the Towers Died, you probably know that, a huge article. I saw a section that said 903 or 902 in the South Tower Sky Lobby. And I knew, because Welles had been recovered, his body had been recovered, and pretty much intact, that he had to have been passing through the Sky Lobby at the time the plane hit. So I read that section of the article, and in there were two references by Judy Ween and by Ling Young to this mysterious man wearing a red bandana. and how he had firematic skills, obviously, from he was calling up, basically setting up a triage. So I knew in my heart of hearts that had to be Welles. He carried a red bandana with him ever since he was a little boy, and his father had given it to him on his way to church one time. He said, Welles was dressed in a little suit, and my husband took a white handkerchief and folded it up and put it in his breast pocket, and then he took a bandana, because my husband always carried them, he happened to grab a red one, said, here, Welles, here's the red bandana, that's for you to keep in your back pocket, that's for to blow your nose, for messy jobs, leave this white one. It was totally a practical thing. And so, but that was the clue to help us find Welles. So, because we were able to unlock a lot of the mystery of his last time on Earth, we were able to move ahead and make some good things happen. We were deeply honored that President Obama chose to speak about our son. I met with President Obama and Mrs. Obama before the ceremony, the dedication ceremony. It was not like meeting the leader of the free world, the President of the United States. It was like meeting caring parents who were deeply concerned and sympathetic with all that we had gone through. So that was quite a beautiful thing for us. I'll talk a little bit more about how we move forward, but I want to give Honor a chance to say a few words.
What I'd most like to tell you all about Welles is about his compassion for others. I obviously saw it as a sister. I'll never forget my senior year. I also went to Boston College, and my brother called me up on a Friday night. His first question was, why aren't you out? And I said, well, I'm actually taking the LSATs tomorrow morning. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Go, you must be studying like crazy. No, not really. I wasn't much for studying. I did a little bit. And I found out the next day after my LSATs, I called my parents to say, no, it's done. It's pretty easy. I think I did really well. My dad said, well, I'm glad you're doing well. Your brother woke me up before 6 a.m. this morning, worried about you because he didn't think you had studied enough. So that was Welles. He always cared about other people. And it struck me only a year or two ago when I was at an event at Boston College, and I was introduced to somebody who was in his class, and that person said, your brother was one of the kindest people I've ever met. And the person who had introduced us said, right? And it struck me that 16, 17 years after his passing, what most people want to share is how kind he was and the story of the kindness that he showed them, and something that they will never forget. So we often speak at schools and to children, and that's the one thing that I like to tell kids, is how do you want to be remembered? How do you live your life so that after you're gone, people are talking about your goodness and your kindness? Because that's the legacy of Welles, is doing for others and being a hero for everyone.
Thank you, Honor. Welles adored both his sisters, by the way, you can tell. They're pretty special. At any rate, so moving forward, it became clear that we were getting donations. Wonderful people were sending donations to us in Welles's memory. So we set up a charitable trust, and the first thing we did was form scholarships at Nyack High School, which we continue to this day. However, his friends at Boston College and in Nyack were very busy organizing additional fundraisers. So money continued to come in, which was just great. And we've been able to expand our work over the years to support, among other things, Bonnie Bray School, which is here in Morris County, I think, and nearby. Anyway, it's New Jersey. Children of Bellevue, a wonderful environmental program, the Wild Center up in the Adirondacks, many different programs, therapeutic riding programs. So that was wonderful, and we were very happy with that until a friend of Wells's from Boston College, who was an attorney in Chicago, called and said, I'm on an advisory commission for the Fetzer Institute, and if anyone doesn't, I didn't know what they were. It's worth studying or looking up who they are, Google them, because they're a fascinating organization. Their mission is to study how love and forgiveness can work in the world. So we applied for a grant, and were given a very generous grant by them to develop a curriculum called the Red Bandana Project. And so we move ahead with lessons on working with mostly teachers from New Jersey, from Sussex area, and from down here, one gal is from the Parsippany area, retired but brilliant teachers. Lessons on leadership, caring for others, team, the power of one, bridging divides, bringing disparate groups together through understanding, forgiveness, and carpe diem. And so this curriculum is available. Honor has written a children's book for very young elementary school children that's been well received. And we go out, as she mentioned, into the schools to speak quite a bit. I do a lot of speaking throughout New Jersey, actually, as well. So when and the hope is this, that I want to share with you all, that these young people that I see when I go out to the schools, they are wonderful. Their minds are bright and energetic and active, and they want to hear the good stories. They want the good models. They want to know the right way to behave. They're not interested in the antics of the celebrities and the athletic people that do terrible things. They really are looking for the good messages. And I like to think that these young people will embrace the concept of the ability to make a difference in this world in ways both big and small, which is what I said at the opening of the 9/11 Museum. That 9/11 should be remembered not just for the tragedy, which was horrible, but for all the good that happened that day, with people helping each other, with our country coming together, and with the good that is moving forward with our young people, understanding the values of faith and of journey and of caring for one another. So good will conquer evil. And I hope that this word you'll feel embraced by that today. So thank you very much for having us here. We appreciate it very much, and God bless you all.